Everybody for joining. I'm going to give a minute here to do a little bit of a tech check and make sure that everything is coming in. So thanks everybody for coming in today. Just making sure that we are up and running. Giving it a second. See, I have, go back up to the main page, Storybook today, which we're going to start playing with here in a minute. I'm just going to give people a little bit of time to come in. I got to check to make sure my audio is going through. Looks like it's going pretty good. So basically, for those of you just joining or just coming in, Storybook is a tool that has been around for a while, but it's something that somehow I've avoided knowing about. It's basically this thing that just helps you, I guess, sort of display, document, show different UI components. And I think it's actually a really kind of fun and a neat idea. So I want to play with it. I just sort of wanted to experiment with it, test it out. I don't really have any experience with it other than the sort of hour or so of experimenting I did. So if you have some Storybook experience in the chat, please stick around, help me out, because I'm going to have some questions as we go through this. If you have questions of your own, if you're interested in any of this, feel free to ask questions. We'll just sort of play around. We're going to make this up as we go. I've got my towel here today. The humidity here in Michigan is completely out of control. It's in very much an unacceptable territory. And we don't have the world's most powerful air conditioner because we don't need to use air conditioning all that often. And right now it just cannot keep up. So I'm quite literally just sweating to death in here. So you might see me towel myself off so I don't sweat on my keyboard. But humidity is a little out of control. But all right. So I think what we'll do, we've got a few people in here. So welcome. Thanks everybody for joining. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and get started playing. And if you come in, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chats. We can take this wherever we want to go. All right. So for Storybook, I know one of the kind of cool things of this when I played with it before is that you can basically add it into any project that really already exists. So what we can do is we can start to go through the intro here. And we might as well just go with the built-in tasks and everything. So I'm going to create, let's head into my play folder that I use for doing little things like this. And we'll go ahead and do create React app. And they want it to call Taskbox. Let's just call Storybook testing and go ahead and create this. NPX is another thing that I didn't really know existed before a few weeks ago, but it's just sort of a handy way of running some script from NPM without having to do like a global install of this. So I don't have to do create React app, don't have to bring that down locally to use it. And then the next step too, this is something I've actually never used before, but you can use NPX as a way of just getting like a specific script out of a package without needing to actually add it to your app, which is kind of slick. And so you do that to sort of initialize Storybook into this application. So npx -p, which I think is -package. Let's check that. npx -p is, package. So the package to be installed and then the actual commands that we want to run. So sb storybook init. So, all right, so our app is done. We call this Storybook testing. And let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just type it out. It's -p Storybook CLI sb init. And for those of you just coming in, we're playing with Storybook today. And I don't really have too much of an agenda other than I kind of want to just experiment with what Storybook can do. And I'm actually thinking it could be kind of a fun way to document some kind of React components, sort of create some documentation. So I just want to basically experiment with that idea and see how it goes. And right now I'm just running the storybook initialization. So that is running. And while that's running, I'll just get this project up so we can look at these things side by side. Where's the rest of my project? Did I open the right thing? I should have. We'll give it a minute. I might need to npm install this too, because I don't know where the rest of my project files are. I might need to just run npm install in this app as well. Hey Sam, thanks for joining us. We're testing out Storybook today, which is a way of sort of documenting UI components. And it looks like a fun little tool. I haven't really experimented with it much before, and so we're just playing around with that, seeing what we can do. And we're doing my favorite part of every stream, where the part where we install npm things that I should have done beforehand but didn't think about doing. So it's really great times. It's like sitting around the campfire, but just in a JavaScript world. We just sit around and watch npm installs. Actually, we should totally have like a custom emote or custom something to happen during npm installs so that we have something to entertain ourselves. I think that could be fun. So I'm going to run npm install because create React app took a while to run. The Storybook initialization took a while to run. And now I actually have to install the React dependencies and such. So we will wait another minute or two. But while we wait for that, we can start to look over some of the documentation and some of the things that we want to do. And essentially, we're going to run Storybook, and it's going to give us this, basically this environment in the browser where we can view what Storybook calls stories, or basically, I almost think of it as like different ways of using the components in your applications. And so when this runs, we will try that out. We really do need an emote or something to run during npm installs, just because I think it comes up during streams so often, and it's absolutely ridiculous to sit through and watch. I wonder if I should check out Yarn more. That's something I haven't experimented with. Maybe in the chat you might know, but doesn't Yarn have some sort of global cache so that you're not getting things from the network all the time to make these things faster? I maybe should have tried Yarn install on this, but npm is what I know, so I stick with what I know, whether I should or not. Getting older, afraid to use new things when I know these tools that already exist. Because this is really taking a long time. In good old JavaScript too, it brings in libraries that I have no idea. Like there's a new version of Popper, which is something I have absolutely no idea what this is doing. But luckily, I'm installing this, and my Node modules folder is probably epic with everything in the entire registry that I won't be using to build these apps. Hey, Alyssa, Speedo Girl, joining in the chat as well. We are trying out Storybook today, and we're trying it for React, but actually they have documentation for Angular and Svelte and Vue, so this isn't a tool that's specific to a certain framework. But Alyssa, I was just saying we need a custom emote or something we could show on screen during npm installs, just because I feel like this happens all the time, and otherwise I have nothing to be doing. Like if I forget to do this sort of step beforehand, I have no choice but to try to figure out what to say on screen while I watch this install go on. I almost feel like we could have some fun and like bust out a timer, a stopwatch, and start to time the npm installs, because this one is approaching pretty legendary territory here. I don't even know what this is doing anymore. I'm pretty sure I am getting the entire npm registry, because this is straight up kind of ridiculous here. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's even something different. What we can do is we can start to look around. This will probably finish the moment I move away from this. But when you install Storybook in an app, you get these, stories essentially. And I'm actually wondering if I did something wrong, which would be highly unfortunate because I actually don't seem to have a React app here for some reason, which is really strange that happened. I don't know if anybody in chat saw what I did, but I think I will probably switch over to another app I was toying with Storybook because that was really weird. So I started down the Storybook demo, and I have this code up here. And what we'll do is we'll just... Actually, it's kind of weird that you don't really have... Actually, okay, so this doesn't even have an app. So it looks like you just get a Storybook, which is interesting. So let's just try seeing what happens if we run this. So we do... actually, let's go back to this app and do yarn Storybook and see what happens. So this should open up a browser for us that we can test things on. And man, I was mentioning earlier, the humidity here is out of control and the air conditioning can't even keep up. It's just absolutely obnoxious. This is not my favorite time of the year in Michigan because it's basically turned into a jungle. And I would put on my fan that I have over here, but it basically just completely, the mic picks it up like crazy. So the towel is the solution instead. All right, so we have Storybook up here. So the basic idea that I've gotten so far is that with Storybook, you get these .stories.js files. And what you can do with them is essentially, let's see, to Storybook.story. You give these things these names, and you can essentially, I actually wonder where this is coming from. Okay, so it's importing like the default demo from here. So we have stories for welcome and stories for a button. So this button, and let me bump up the font size here a little bit. The button has text, and then there is an emoji button here as well. And as best I can tell, okay, so the component itself is coming from the demo. So I wonder, so what I want to do is see how we could do this for something custom. So let's build something that's completely new. So we'll just call this to, what's another, not a button, but let's say if we did a, I don't know, input.stories.js. And I'll take this as like a rough starting point. And hey, Yuashi, I always feel silly saying username, so I hope I got that right. Thanks for joining. We are talking about Storybook today, which is this tool you see here, and it's a way of sort of, I guess, documenting and showing off UI components. And there's a basic button one built in. And what I want to do is create a Storybook for, we'll just try creating something custom just to see if it works. And then I actually want to move in and make this work with some kind of React components. So some more, I guess, feature-full UI components to see if we can actually do something useful with this. But at the moment, I just want to see if I can get this to work. So I'm going to create, let's say we have an input, and we want to make this the world's simplest component to start with. So we're just gonna make it a straight up input, And I think I need to return this. And okay, so what is registering this with Storybook? It says, is Storybook a library to support BDD style testing of UI components? Yes, I believe so. So I haven't played with it a ton. That's sort of what I want to figure out. But I know it's there's ways of helping you test your components and also just sort of documenting them, especially if you have like a set of UI components you're using internally, that it gives you a way of just like sort of showing them off and documenting the different ways of using them. So, but basically that's what we're trying to figure out. So in this case, I'm thinking like if we said like default here, and let's say default, I'm going to add just a little more. So let's do this and save this and see if that works. And okay, so it immediately refreshed. We have this input, we have this default, and we have this. So now let's say that we had different ways of using this input, and we'll bring in some more complex examples right away, or in a minute, I should say. But let's say we just had a placeholder object in here, and placeholder equals placeholder. I think that's the right. Somebody yell at me if that's the wrong syntax, but I think that's how that works. So if we had this basic input component and we had two different ways of using it, we could say, all right, so we have our basic input, but now I want to say with placeholder, and we'll make that a constant as well. And now I would do input, but this time I would say placeholder equals, it doesn't matter, my placeholder. And in theory, we would have, oh, there we go. Nothing was returned. Oh, because I did the good old React. Used the wrong syntax in there. So essentially now I have my input. So this is my default input. And then I have with placeholder, which just shows how to use an input with a placeholder. And like for me, so this is kind of cool just because you could see I'm in a real world app, this would be in like a separate file, this input. But in this case, I'm just doing the world's simplest things. I'm just putting the input in here. But I almost view this kind of as a fun way of testing your components, just because you can come into the Storybook interface and just see these different permutations of them right away. But you could also use it as a way of documenting your code too. So like I could see you putting in something like this is what a basic input looks like, and that didn't like it probably because it needs to be wrapped in something. So we need to do this. Pretty good air handling though. That's always a fun thing to find. So you could have, this is what a basic input looks like. I mean, you could even put in here like syntax to use too, I suppose. I don't know. This might be a silly thing what I'm doing here, but I mean, you could even use this as like documentation. And here's how to code it. In this case, it would almost be, like I said, just straight up documentation. And okay, so those are kind of the basics. So what I want to do now is use this as a way of showing off something a little more complex. So let's bring in a Kendo React component. And if you haven't heard of or used Kendo React before, it's basically just a whole lot of awesome React components in one package. So there's a lot here. I guess in one library would be a better way of saying it, because they're all sort of modular NPM packages. So if you have any requests, any components you want to see, chat, if you've been dying to see a demo of any of these components, feel free to pick one out of thin air. I'll give chat about like 30 seconds if you want to suggest one. Otherwise, I'll pick one and we'll go from there. But if you've been craving donut chart demos and you just woke up and absolutely dying to see a donut chart, I can do that for you. Or drop downs are always a fun one. Like I said, charts. The grid is probably our most popular component, so that could be a good one as well. Calendar, bubble donuts. I don't know if we could do bubble donuts. What even is a bubble chart? I think that should be a thing, even if it isn't. Sarah, I sort of agree. Let's do a bubble chart. I kind of like this idea. Maybe we can put some like donut data on this or something. So let's say that we want to create some tests and also some documentation around the bubble chart. So what we'll have to do is a few different things. So I am on the bubble chart and I got to find so in the kind of React documentation, I've got to find the appropriate things to install, which I can find here. So we got to make sure our app gets those things because we're going to need the components from kind of React itself in order to be able to use this. And while that installs, let me find my way back to the bubble chart, which looks like this. And actually, one of the reasons I like the idea of this sort of thing is to me, I could see a potential future where the Storybook interface is almost like a slightly easier thing to do than viewing like straight up documentation, because the documentation is nice because you get to see kind of more of a real world example. But sometimes, at least if you're like me, when you go to use some of these components for the first time, the first thing you want to see is just like hello world. Like I don't need to see something real world. I just need to see the world's simplest syntax in order to use this, and then sort of building up to more complex things. And so what we can do is we can try to create this for our good old bubble chart. And I think this was Yarn Storybook. I think I had this running in here. So let's kill our terminal so that we can run everything in VS Code. And yeah, the port was in use. So we'll have to do that. And while that runs up, how about Blazor components? I don't think that's something that's going to be possible. I don't know if we have Ed around that can tell us like any sort of crazy magic things, mad science experiments we could do to get them working with Storybook. I guess Blazor components render to the web, so it seems like something that would be theoretically possible, but not necessarily easy. All right, so we're back in Storybook, and we've got our chart installed. So since we have that, let's create a new file. So we'll tell bubble stories, which is something I always wanted to do. And let's start by just getting, I want to get just like the boilerplate code before we actually start to get into the component code. I always feel better when I see Hello World sort of working. So I'm just going to pretend bubble is a div that says, is there a bubble emoji? If not, there really should be. iSpeech bubble or right? Who creates these? Like when I get bubble emojis, I get iSpeech emoji, and I don't even know what this is, but they both have bubble in the name, so we'll go with it. And we'll say this is bubble, and by default, we'll just render this empty object. Ed is on vacation. Good for him. But what are we going to do when we have Blazor questions and Ed isn't around? We need to summon him. All right, so we have our bubbles. Our very strange bubble emojis that apparently exist that I guess this is one This one's probably supposed to be like a, oh God, not that. This one's supposed to be like a speech bubble, I imagine. I have no idea what this one is or why that exists. It's kind of creepy and weird, but yeah, bubble trouble. Here. All right, so this is like Hello World of Storybook, but this isn't particularly useful. So what I want to do now is actually bring in the bubble chart. And we'll start by, I don't know which of these imports are necessary, but we're just testing things out. So let's just bring them all in. Bring in all the chart items. And let's see, let's just get this working as fast as we can, or just see the minimum amount of stuff we need to get this working. So we have this chart, and let's say let's just put it in here. I'll use my favorite VS Code shortcut, which is Option-Shift-F to reformat. And I know one thing I'm missing from this is somewhere in here I have data. Data equals data. So I need to grab that from the demo. And we'll change this out in a minute because I want to make this, maybe we can make this donut data or something. But again, I just want to see this working first. So we'll just say const data equals all this good stuff. And we'll again format this to make it nice and clean. And did I screw something up? I put this in a new line. I don't like that. There we go. Clean that up. So we got some very arbitrary data for driving this bubble chart. And I wonder if I just save if this just works or if we have to do something else. All right, xplot bands. So I want to just essentially move this demo over before we start sort of experimenting with this. Where actually does this demo get this thing? Xplot bands. Oh, it's just a locally declared variable. So that's easy enough to grab. I swear, I love working with the charts from Kendo React, but sometimes I swear that you essentially need like a statistics degree in order to understand some of these, because we have like your basic charts, the things that everybody knows, like line charts and bar charts. But sometimes we'll get I'll see questions come in, and it's like I'm trying to use the polar chart or the scatter plot or the box plot, and I am no statistics major, so I don't know how a lot of these things work. But I do know what I think the problem is here, while we're seeing an empty square, is I also need a Kendo React theme, and I didn't bring one in. And so I'm going to need to install one of those to get this to work. And for Kendo React, we have 3 different themes. We have, hopefully this is we have default, bootstrap, and material. Does anybody have a favorite? I can bring in your favorite if you have one. Otherwise, I'm just going to pick one at random. First person to say something gets their theme. We'll see if anything comes in. I think material is my favorite because it's the most like hipster thing to do. Bootstrap feels, I don't know, Bootstrap just feels dated at this point. I don't know why. Default theme is fine too. Nobody in chat. Semantic UI. Hey DJ, oh man, DJ Concarne. I hate pronouncing usernames. I'm horrible at it. No semantic UI. Actually, I don't think I know what semantic UI is, and I feel like I should. Semantic UI. User interface is the language of the web. Okay, so I do not know what this is, which is interesting. I don't know if we work with it with Kendo React or not, but that's interesting. For now, I just want to know between the 3 different themes. It looks like no one has strong opinions, so I think I will just go with my favorite. Considering no one else is chiming in, we'll just go with the material design theme. And I will install this, and then we'll have to import it somewhere. Oh, interesting. We need to bring in the Roboto font too, which I'm wondering how we do that with Storybook, because there's no like logical place to do that unless we might have to, I don't know, we'll see. All right, Sarah says material too, so we'll have to try to get this to work. We'll see if just importing this, I think this will work well enough to make sure we can see something, which is all we really care to do at the moment. Once again, NPM is not our friend today. Sarah and Ivana, since you're in here too, I was just saying that for one of our next emotes, we need something to show while NPM installs are happening, just because this comes up all the time, and I always feel like a complete idiot because I have nothing really to say while we're watching this. And especially some of the ones we were doing earlier, they were taking like 2-3 minutes, and I'm just sitting here watching these things, and I need something to make this easier to talk about. All right, so we will import our theme, and we'll just start this up again. And I am curious because I have not tried out Storybook in this way before, so I don't know exactly what this is, if this is going to work like I expect it to work, because I don't know if this is going to be smart enough to import this CSS into this sort of container that Storybook is going to be working. Sarah, chicken with a clock. I think that could work. Our ninja chicken. I like the Kondoka with a thumbs up too. I had not seen that one before. We'll have to. Oh, and we got the ninja with the thumbs up as well. Excellent. So Storybook is starting up again. Yeah, we do need the clock one. The clock one I like too because it's more generic. All right, can't resolve, theme default. Of course you can't resolve theme default because we installed material. So we'll have to wait for that to go again. Hopefully it figures it out. The clock is good because it is, it's more generic than just npm install because you need to install things and run things in .NET, Blazor, etc. I wonder if that syntax error killed us here. I'm just going to start it back up. It should start a little bit faster since we had that set up and ready to go. And hopefully we see our theme. Otherwise, we're going to have to go back over to, let's see, we got our examples here. Head back over to the Storybook documentation and figure out how to do this or pick a simpler component. Because, man, this is taking a long time. Default Webpack setup. I will say that it was fast once this thing was running. It was refreshing really quickly, but it's kind of taking a very long time for something that feels like it shouldn't be all that complex. But I guess this is JavaScript nowadays. All right, so we have, hopefully we see a bubble chart. Let's see. Yes, we have a bubble chart. Okay, so that worked. And actually the font, this isn't the Roboto font. That's why that font is kind of ugly. So I actually wonder if, where's the thing where it wanted me to do the right font? I needed to go to material theme. I wonder, does anybody know if you can do this? I might be making up syntax, which I do sometimes, but I'm curious if this works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. We can just deal with an ugly font. Yeah, I don't think you can do this. I mean, I could install this like locally to the project. It depends on how much we care here. Because I could do this, right? And save this, or can I just put this in as like app.css and then import it? Sometimes making up syntax works, and sometimes it just ends up being a bit of pain. So we are in this, I think this needs to go in source. CSS. Let's see if that works. I hate to restart this, but I feel like I almost need to just see if we get this error again. Just because I'd like to see the actual font in here. because I think it'll look a little bit nicer so you can actually see what the material theme is supposed to look like. I don't even know what font this is by default, but it's kind of ugly. Okay, yeah, so it's not Roboto, so it's falling back to Helvetica? I guess that's Helvetica. I don't know if we have any font nerds in the chat. You can tell me if that's Helvetica. I prefer Roboto, so we're gonna see if this works, and if not, we'll just live with Helvetica and think a little less of ourselves throughout the rest of the stream. We'll have failed, but failed just a little bit, so that's okay. And once again, we need the chicken clock emoji because this is taking forever. NPM takes a while for everything we're doing today, but we've succeeded fairly well so far. So let's kill this. Come on, show me Roboto font. Oh, is that Roboto? I don't think it is, but it didn't fail. I wonder, did it actually load the right font? Let's see. If not, it's okay. We can live with it, but I just kind of need to know personally. Why can't I click on CSS? Why is everything failing me right now? Am I seriously just not able to click CSS? Is there no CSS that's being loaded? That is really strange, but we will live with it. I would have thought, I guess, well, okay. So I guess the reason why this wouldn't work is because normally these local things would be hit on the server. I wonder if there is a way, though. I'm curious, is there a search on here? Like Storybook, add CSS from network. Webpack CSS support, whether it's in Story UI component. Yeah, it doesn't look like you can get it from the server directly, at least not in here, which is fine. We'll go with whatever the fallback is, Helvetica. That will be good enough. We can end the dream of trying to get the proper font in here. So we'll just have to live with this font, which is fine. So let's clear this out. And all right, so I have this bubble chart, but I kind of want this to be a simple documentation page, like what is the world's easiest way of using a bubble chart, and then sort of build upon this. So in this case, I want to take like everything extraneous out of this. So XPlot bands, which I'm assuming are going to be like these things here. I'm assuming that's what that is. I'm pretty sure these are optional though, so I'm going to get rid of them. And nothing crashed, so I don't even know what even is this. I think the axes are actually totally optional, so we can kill that. Oh, well, that is weird. So we might. I think that's because we have negative data, but we can address that in a minute. So we have this. I don't think we need a legend. I don't think we need a tooltip. I don't think we need a title. We do need to say this is bubble. We do need to know X and Y and size. And I think the category is going to show, actually, why is category necessary in here? I think that is going to be necessary too, because that'll come in handy for the next part of this. But if we get rid of that one with negative data just to clean up, because really this is just documentation that we're doing here. If we take this out, I think we will have essentially the world's simplest bubble chart. And so what I would do is say, okay, for my documentation purposes, basically what I'm saying is here is a bubble chart, and default is like, I could even put in a little something like this and say like default usage of this bubble chart, and say like this is the simplest way to bubble chart and put this in. And from here, what I might do is probably if this were a real world app, I would basically move some of this stuff to their own files. But I think as a next step, I'd say something like, say like with title. And say bubble chart with a title. And what we could do is really we could even take this in with props, maybe title. And if we go back here, where is the not this, I wanted to back to the Candy React bubble chart page, because I wanted to see the code for this. Title was just chart title. So if my bubble component that I'm using here has an optional title that appears here, so I could say something like, if we have a title, like this, and it doesn't like this. Unexpected keyword oh, I can't just have a const keyword sitting there by itself. That doesn't really work. And it's rebuilding. This is a little slower than I would like it to be, which would concern me a little bit if I were building up something a little bit more complex. So we broke something. Our default works fine. Simplest way to use a kind of React button chart or a bubble chart, and that looks good. But our with title did not work. A bubble chart with a title. And I'm not totally sure why. So we have, because I didn't actually pass it in. That would explain some things. So let's say title equals my chart title. And we need to wrap this again. So we'll do that. Hopefully, there we go. So we see a bubble chart with a title. And what I like about this is it's just a really just kind of simple way of documenting your components and the different way of using them. So we've got the default usage of a bubble chart with a title. Why don't we do one more? Let's say, I don't know, what else would we want to do? I didn't see, we could do a tooltip, even though this has got like a crazy weird, I don't even understand what the syntax is, and I feel like I probably should. And I also feel like this chart legend, whatever this is, didn't show either. I'm going to toss this in real quick just because I'm curious. Did that go within the series? It did not. Went outside. Chart legend? Yeah, I didn't see that doing anything. The tooltip, though, was pretty useful. It's just that syntax that's kind of strange. So let's bring in the tooltip because I want to see what it looks like. So we have the tooltip, and this is kind of useful because now when you hover over this, you can see different things to use. So what we could do, is this opacity even necessary? I kind of feel like you should need to pass in opacity. Yeah. This is the bit that is really kind of strange. That's a really odd thing to pass in. And so applications is just a hard-coded word, so we actually don't need that. But this is saying, like, grab the third thing in the object, and then grab the second and probably format it according to this format, is at least what I'm guessing this is doing. If anybody else knows specifically what that is, let me know. But if I'm writing this as a custom component, I'd probably do something like take in an optional tooltip and do the same sort of thing in here, where I'd say, if I have a tooltip, then I'll spit out this chart tooltip. And this bit would move. Hopefully this will handle escaping correctly into the tooltip format. And then I could come down here and say const with tooltip. And we'll again put this in one of these things and say bubble chart with a tooltip. And bubble, we'll spell it correctly. Tooltip equals this mess. So let's put this in here. And if I can correctly get my syntax correct, that should work. And so now, yeah, so this seems to work. We have our tooltip. And this is, at least as I've explored this, this is sort of the most compelling bit of this to me, because I can build this component. And like I said, in my real world app, I would have this in its own sort of file. This would actually just be in my app's source code directly. But then in my story code, I could come up with these different scenarios for actually using it. So like show off what the default usage is, show off the thing with the title, show it off with a tooltip. And then this serves both as kind of documentation, because I could come out here and see different ways I could actually use this thing. And it also serves as really a testing tool, because since the source code is going to live outside of this, essentially when I update my source code, I could head to my storybook and say, okay, here's the default usage. Make sure the title still works as it's supposed to. Make sure the tooltip still works as it's supposed to as well, which is kind of slick. So cool. So what we did, let's see, we've got a little time left. We created a button component. We created, the button was the built-in one to Storybook. So we created an input, just a basic input, one with a placeholder. And then we created a bubble chart as well. So I wonder, I didn't have, if there's anything in chat that you are sort of curious about in terms of working with Storybook, anything you'd like to dive into, let me know. There's certain things that we can do one more example here before we move on. I'm just sort of perusing the documentation because I know there's more to Storybook just because I'm fairly new to it. And so if you do know something about it, have some suggestions or things you'd like to see, like I said, just let me know, or we'll just pick one more example at random that we could dive through and actually try this out. Add a custom body. Sometimes you might need text HTML bodies. So you can accomplish this by creating a file named preview body. I actually wonder inside the Storybook config directory. So I think that's in here. So what happens if I create a preview body.html and I do this thing where I say custom root. And what I want to do is, if you were here earlier, I was really wanting to get the Roboto theme or the Roboto font into this app. And I was having some problems doing it because of the way Storybook essentially works. So I'm wondering if I can cheat my way into it this way. So let's do this. It's probably not the world's most recommended way of doing this, but let's see what happens. We can have some fun. And actually, I think it worked. Did it? Yeah, we're totally using the... Did it? Okay. Now I need to confirm that this actually took hold. Did it get this from the... Oh, this is Roboto's on the element itself. Does the browser have a way of detecting whether fonts were actually loaded or not? I guess I could go to the network to see if it comes in that way. So we don't want HTML. Maybe not. So I don't know if this works or not, or maybe we even need to restart this. We can try that out to see if this comes in. I'm sort of hell-bent on trying to get this to work for no good reason whatsoever. I could probably also check, come to think of it, I could do like document query selector, see if custom root made it. Okay, so it did not. So either I didn't do this preview body correctly, or I just need to restart this. So we'll see if it works if it starts back up. Yeah, because it says you can put a style tag in your preview body, which is exactly what we did. Storybook will inject these tags into the iframe where your components are rendered. So this seems like exactly what we need. I'm guessing it just didn't pick it up the first time we went through this. So let's do this and see if it worked. Oh yeah, that font definitely looks different. And I imagine now if I not that. I want to make this bigger so everybody can see it. If we do query selector, we should find this thing. Custom root. It's still not there, but it did. It for sure. I'm gonna probably it's got a lot of different styles on here. Yeah, that's not the style we want. But it seems to be in there because this is definitely a different font. In here, this font looks a lot nicer. So that is handy and good to know. All right. So any other requests for Storybook? Anything else you've been dying to try out or use? Because otherwise, I will pick out one last thing to try. Just because there's a lot here to mess with that we can do. I'm just sort of playing around on the documentation. No other suggestions. Nobody else is interested in seeing all the things that Storybook can do. I know there's also this concept of add-ons for Storybook. So like these actions, for instance, there's a way of populating that with basically events that come in. And I think like on the button one, you can see like when individual things were clicked. And actually, does it show up by default like on the input? I don't know if the button had to do anything special. Okay, so action clicked. So I wonder, this is probably a good last task since I didn't get any specific requests, is to see how we can add these in so that our custom things that we wrote support this as well. So let's do that. We'll do two different examples of this. So this input, and I'll scroll some of this out of the way. On our input, maybe I want to know, let's say like on change. I don't know if I did that right, but we'll just see what happens. So change. Let's see if this actually has something in it. Synthetic event. Well, it's firing every time there's a change. Did the button pass anything to it? No, just a name. Action clicked. So that's it. Okay. That makes sense. It looks like this is the stuff that's passed in anyways, because I think if we did target that value, we could find, yeah, at this point, the value is J. And if we come in here, change this, the target's value should be, yeah, the full amount. Okay, so then what we'll do is let's kill off this and this. And I'm curious if we can get this to work with some custom things that are coming from Kendo React, because I know there's some events associated with these different charts. And let me find one of these. Panning and zooming. Tooltips. There's probably an event associated with tooltips. Chart tooltip component. What events do you have? I don't see any events. Format color background. It's got to be an event that's pretty easy to use. Let's see. Series types? No, we were in there. We can just go into the top level API. I really thought the tooltip would have one. Got our title. It's not really going to be chart title props. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, because I gotta say, I haven't tried to do, I don't know who came up with this display. I haven't tried the events with with the chart component. I guess typically you don't need to know when things happen. We could try this for like the dialog, for instance, is going to have like a open and close event for sure. All right, why don't we add just one more to the input? So we have change. I'm curious. Focus is another one, right? Okay. Kind of interesting. And I assume, too, you could do this with custom events that you have, that you fired as well. If you had certain things that you wanted to trigger manually, you could get to work with the Actions panel as well. All right. Well, we're getting towards the top of the hour. This is really all I wanted to cover with Storybook. So if you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think I'll wrap up for today. If you found any of this interesting, let us know. I'm always looking for ideas for different streaming topics. Things to show off. Storybook is just something that captured my interest, so I thought I'd dive into it today, sort of explore, try these things out. If you want to know more about Code It Live, feel free to follow our channel. We have lots of stuff, content around .NET, React, front end, Angular, all sorts of things. So if you follow us, you get notified of different things for streaming. We've also got a calendar in there as well, so you can keep up to date. But other than that, so thanks everybody for joining today, for taking a little look at Storybook. Hopefully you found this interesting. I definitely find this kind of a fun tool that I'm going to play with more. And I know if I were in a position where I was at a company where I had like a custom set of UI components that I needed to sort of document and test, I would definitely consider using something like this to do that. So definitely worth checking out. But all right, thanks again for everybody that joined.